The weight of 12 years settles differently on silk sheets than it does on skin. I learned this the way I learned everything in Giovanni Martelli's world, through careful observation and practiced silence. The bedroom ceiling of our Tuscan villa held more of my attention than my husband ever had, its frescoed angels witnessing the slow calcification of what had once been called love. At 34, I had perfected the art of existing beautifully without actually living. The woman in the mirror each morning was a masterpiece of controlled presentation. Honey blonde hair arranged in loose waves that cost more to maintain than most people's monthly rent. Skin maintained through treatments I endured rather than enjoyed. Clothing selected not for comfort, but for the image Giovanni required his wife to project. Mrs. Martelli, they called me at charity galas and business dinners. Never Beatrice. That girl had disappeared somewhere between the wedding vows at 22 and the realization, years later, that I had married not a man but a carefully constructed empire that required a decorative centerpiece. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains as I traced the pattern of damask wallpaper with my eyes, counting the repeating motifs the way I counted everything now. Breaths, steps, hours until the next required appearance. Giovanni's side of the bed had been empty when I woke, though the indentation in his pillow suggested he'd slept there at some point during the night. Or perhaps he simply wanted me to think he had. 12 years of marriage to a man who controlled information like currency had taught me to trust nothing, not even the evidence of empty spaces. I rose with the practiced grace of someone who had learned that every movement might be observed, evaluated, judged. The marble floor was cold beneath my bare feet as I moved through our bedroom suite, a space larger than the entire apartment I'd shared with 3 roommates when Giovanni first noticed me. Noticed. Such a passive word for what had actually happened. He had selected me, pursued me, claimed me with the same focused intensity he brought to acquiring waterfront properties and eliminating business competitors. The bathroom mirror reflected a woman I sometimes struggled to recognize. Not because age had ravaged me. Giovanni's resources ensured I would remain preserved like a Renaissance painting, untouched by time's casual cruelty. No, the stranger in the mirror was someone else entirely. Someone whose eyes held the particular flatness that comes from years of performing emotion rather than feeling it. I applied moisturizer with methodical strokes, each gesture a meditation in numbness. The morning routine was sacred in its predictability, skincare that cost more per ounce than gold. Hair styled to appear effortlessly perfect. Clothing selected from a closet that could have housed a small boutique. All of it designed to present the image Giovanni required. Elegant, refined, utterly his. The scent of espresso drifted up from the kitchen as I descended the curved marble staircase, my hand barely grazing the wrought iron railing. Our villa perched on a cliff overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea, all honey-colored stone and terracotta roofs, a monument to old money and older power. Giovanni had bought it the year we married, though I'd learned not to use the word we when discussing his acquisitions. What was his remained distinctly his. I was simply permitted to exist within it. Hazel was already in the kitchen, her capable hands moving through the familiar choreography of breakfast preparation. She'd been with the household for 8 years, long enough to understand the unspoken rules, the invisible boundaries. At 47, she maintained the kind of professional discretion that Giovanni valued above almost any other quality. She knew when to see things and when to develop convenient blindness. "Good morning, Mrs. Martelli," she said, not quite meeting my eyes as she set a place at the breakfast table. The formal dining room remained unused these days. Giovanni preferred taking his meals in his study when home, and I'd grown accustomed to the smaller intimacy of the kitchen table, even if intimacy was an illusion. "Good morning." My voice carried the practiced warmth expected of an employer who treated staff well. Giovanni insisted on this performance too, benevolent aristocracy, gracious in our privilege. Never mind that I had no actual power in this household, no authority to make decisions beyond selecting which designer dress to wear, to which obligation. "Mr. Martelli left early this morning. He said he won't be back until late evening." Hazel's tone remained carefully neutral, but I caught the slight hesitation, the way her gaze flickered toward the coffee cup she was filling. She knew something. The staff always knew things before I did. I accepted the espresso with a nod, wrapping my hands around the porcelain cup as if its warmth could reach the cold place that had taken root in my chest. Through the kitchen windows, the Mediterranean stretched endlessly blue, dotted with white sails and distant islands. Freedom existed out there, just beyond reach, mocking me with its proximity. "Did he mention where?" I asked, knowing the futility even as the words left my mouth. Giovanni shared his whereabouts on his own terms, if at all. His business, the legitimate facade of real estate development masking the machinery of influence, coercion, and calculated violence that actually sustained his empire, operated in shadows he had no intention of illuminating for me. He didn't say. Hazel set down a plate of fruit and pastries, arranging them with more care than necessary. But he seemed distracted. Distracted. The word hung in the air between us, weighted with implication. I'd noticed it too over the past few months. The way Giovanni's attention had shifted, how conversations died when I entered rooms, the increase in late meetings and sudden trips. At first, I'd attributed it to business concerns, the usual pressures of maintaining power in a world where competitors circled like sharks, scenting blood in the water. But intuition, that voice I'd learned to suppress, had been whispering a different truth. I sipped the espresso, letting its bitterness coat my tongue. "Thank you, Hazel. I'll take breakfast in the garden." The courtyard garden was my sanctuary, the one space Giovanni had permitted me to shape according to my own preferences. Lavender and rosemary grew in terracotta pots, their scents mixing with the salt air. Climbing jasmine covered the stone walls, white blooms like stars against green foliage. Here, at least, something grew because I willed it to, not because Giovanni had orchestrated it. I settled into the wrought iron chair, the metal still cool from the night, and tried to taste the strawberries Hazel had selected. They were perfect, deep red, impossibly sweet. I could catalog their perfection without actually experiencing it. Everything in my life had become this way. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly hollow. My phone rested on the table beside my plate, its screen dark and silent. Once, it had felt like a lifeline to the world beyond these walls. Now it served primarily as a reminder of my isolation. The contacts list contained numbers for caterers, florists, personal shoppers, the infrastructure required to maintain my role. Friends from before the marriage had drifted away over the years, unable to bridge the growing distance between my performed life and their authentic ones. And I'd let them go, too tired from the daily performance to maintain connections that required genuine pieces of myself. The morning stretched ahead with its usual emptiness. A workout with the personal trainer Giovanni had hired. A session with the stylist who maintained my hair. Perhaps a visit to the foundation I nominally chaired, another of Giovanni's carefully constructed proofs of our respectability. Hours to fill with activities that created the illusion of purpose, while changing nothing fundamental about my existence. I was scrolling through my calendar, confirming appointments I didn't care about, when the phone buzzed in my hand. A text from an unknown number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Wrong numbers were common enough. But something made me open it. The message contained no words, just a photograph. Giovanni and a woman I'd never seen before, sitting close together at a restaurant I recognized. One of the exclusive places near the coast, the kind that didn't advertise because the right people already knew about it. Her hand rested on his arm, with casual familiarity. His expression held a warmth I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The timestamp on the photo was from last night. My hand shook slightly as I stared at the screen. Not surprise exactly. Some part of me had known, the way you know a storm is coming before the first drops fall. But seeing it rendered explicit, photographed and delivered like evidence in a trial, brought a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins. Another text arrived, then another. More photos spanning weeks, maybe months. Giovanni and this woman, younger than me, dark-haired, beautiful in an entirely different way, at various locations. A hotel entrance, walking along a private beach, his hand at the small of her back in a gesture of possession that mirrored how he'd once touched me. I set the phone down carefully, afraid I might drop it otherwise. The jasmine scent seemed overwhelming suddenly, cloying rather than sweet. The garden walls that had felt like sanctuary now felt like the borders of my cage. 12 years. I'd given 12 years to being Mrs. Giovanni Martelli, to existing as the elegant, obedient shadow of a man who treated love as another form of acquisition. I'd suppressed my own desires, my own voice, my own identity until I wasn't certain what remained beneath the performance. And now, apparently, I was being replaced. Upgraded. Exchanged for a newer model who didn't yet know the price of being chosen by Giovanni Martelli. The rational part of my mind, the part that had learned to survive by being practical, by accepting reality rather than fighting it, whispered that this was inevitable. Men like Giovanni didn't maintain monogamy unless it served their purposes. Power and desire moved in the same channels for them, both requiring constant assertion, constant conquest. I had been naive to expect anything different. But beneath the rational acceptance, something else stirred. Something I'd thought I'd successfully buried under years of compliance and careful silence. Rage. Not the hot, explosive kind that burned out quickly. This was cold, crystalline fury that clarified rather than clouded. I was angry not because I loved Giovanni. That illusion had died years ago, suffocated under the weight of his control. But because I'd allowed myself to become this. A beautifully maintained possession that could be discarded when it no longer pleased its owner. I picked up the phone again, studying the woman's face in the photographs. She smiled at Giovanni with genuine warmth, unaware that his love was a Venus flytrap, beautiful and lethal. Part of me wanted to warn her, to send her a message outlining exactly what awaited her. The slow erosion of self, the gradual realization that being chosen by Giovanni meant being consumed by him. But I knew she wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either, at 20, whatever she was, dazzled by power and attention. The sound of footsteps on the stone path made me look up. Hazel approached with fresh coffee, her expression carefully neutral, but I saw the question in her eyes. She'd noticed my stillness, the way I was staring at nothing. Mrs. Martelli, is everything all right? The question was genuine despite its formal delivery. Hazel had witnessed my gradual disappearance over the years, the way I'd shrunk into the role Giovanni required. She'd been kind in the small ways the situation permitted. Extra care with meals I barely ate. Quiet solidarity in her continued presence. I'm fine, I said automatically, then stopped. What was the point of lying anymore? Actually, no, I'm not fine. I handed her the phone, watching her face as she scrolled through the images. Her expression remained controlled, but I saw the tightening around her eyes, the way her lips pressed together. She'd known. Of course she'd known. Staff always knew. How long? I asked. Mrs. Martelli, Please, just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, loyalty to Giovanni warring with something else, perhaps sympathy, perhaps simple human decency. 6 months, maybe 7. I wasn't certain at first. He's been very discreet. 6 months, half a year of performing the role of beloved wife while being replaced in private. The humiliation should have crushed me, but instead it felt liberating. The pretense was over. Whatever came next, at least it would be real. Thank you, I said, taking back the phone. for telling me the truth. Hazel's hand touched my shoulder briefly, a gesture of comfort that violated every professional boundary Giovanni had established. What will you do? That was the question, wasn't it? What does a woman do when she realizes she's been living in a beautiful cage for 12 years? That the man she married never saw her as a person but as a possession? That she's about to be discarded for a shinier version of the same trap? I don't know, I admitted. But I need to speak with him. Tonight. When he comes home. If he came home. Given the photographs, there was every possibility he'd spend the night elsewhere, with her, no longer bothering with the pretense that our marriage meant anything beyond legal convenience and social appearance. The day passed in strange detachment. I moved through my scheduled appointments like an automaton, smiling at the trainer, nodding at the stylist, signing checks at the foundation office. But beneath the performance, my mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, implications. Divorce seemed the obvious answer, except nothing was obvious when it came to Giovanni. Men like him didn't simply let their wives walk away. I knew too much about the machinery of his empire, had witnessed too many private conversations and business dealings. Even without intending to, I'd absorbed information that could damage him if it reached the wrong ears. He would see my departure as a threat to be managed, a problem to be solved. But staying was no longer an option. The photographs had shattered whatever thin hope I'd maintained that our marriage might eventually transform into something mutual, something resembling partnership. I couldn't continue performing for an audience that had already moved on to the next show. By evening, I'd made my decision. I would confront Giovanni, demand the truth, and insist on separation. The details could be negotiated. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd simply walk away with nothing. But I needed to establish that I was no longer his to control, that whatever came next would involve my consent, my choices. I dressed for the confrontation the way one might dress for battle, selecting a simple black dress that required no explanation. Minimal jewelry, hair pulled back from my face. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not the decorative wife Giovanni had curated, but someone harder, clearer, someone who had nothing left to lose. He arrived home just after 10, the sound of his car in the drive sending adrenaline flooding through my system. I waited in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books he'd never read, an artwork acquired for its value rather than its beauty. This was his domain, the heart of his power. Fitting that it would also be the place I reclaimed mine. Giovanni entered, still in his business suit, moving with the confident ease of someone accustomed to owning every space he occupied. He stopped short when he saw me sitting in his chair, my phone on the desk between us, screen illuminated with one of the photographs. Beatrice. My name in his mouth sounded like a reprimand. What are you doing in here? Looking at your future, I said, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Or is she your present? I'm having trouble keeping track of the timeline. His expression shuddered immediately, the warmth draining from his features. This was the Giovanni most people knew. Cold, calculating, dangerous. I'd seen glimpses of it directed at others over the years. Now it focused entirely on me. You're hysterical, he said dismissively, moving to take the phone. Someone is clearly trying to cause trouble. You know how many people would love to drive a wedge between us. I pulled the phone back, standing so we faced each other across the desk. I'm not hysterical. I'm finally seeing clearly. 6 months, Giovanni. At least 6 months you've been with her. Don't insult me by denying it. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I knew specific details. He'd underestimated me, assumed that years of compliance meant permanent blindness. What do you want, Beatrice? Money? You already have access to everything you need. I want a divorce. The words hung between us, simple and devastating. Giovanni's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was very low, very controlled, the tone that usually preceded violence, though he'd never raised a hand to me. He didn't need to. He had other ways of making people suffer. That's not going to happen. Why not? You clearly want someone else. Let me go. Give me enough to start over somewhere new. We can both move on. He laughed, a sound without humor. You really don't understand, do you? You're my wife. Mine. What I do outside this marriage doesn't change that. You'll continue in your role, continue appearing at my side, continue being Mrs. Martelli. That's what you signed up for when you married me. I signed up for a partnership, for love, not to be a decorative object you keep on display while pursuing whatever you want on the side. Then, you were naive. He circled the desk, moving closer. Love is a fantasy for children and fools. What we have is more valuable. Stability, security, position. You have a life most women dream of. You're throwing a tantrum because I have needs you can't meet. The cruelty was breathtaking in its casual delivery. After 12 years, he could still surprise me with his capacity to reduce me to nothing, to make my feelings sound like childish delusions rather than legitimate responses to betrayal. I want out, I repeated, refusing to back down despite every instinct screaming at me to retreat, to smooth this over, to return to the safety of silence. I want a divorce, and I want enough resources to build a life separate from you. Giovanni's hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. You want? You want? His voice rose for the first time, control slipping. You have no idea what you're asking for. No idea what would happen if you tried to leave me. Who would you be without me? A nobody from nowhere with no money, no connections, no protection. You'd be destroyed within a month. I met his eyes, refusing to flinch. Then I'll be destroyed. At least I'll be free. He released my wrist with a sound of disgust, turning away. This conversation is over. You're being emotional and irrational. We'll discuss this when you've calmed down. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. We're discussing this now. I'm not calming down. I'm not going back to pretending. You want to be with her? Fine. But you don't get to keep me as backup. You don't get to have everything while I have nothing. Giovanni's phone rang, the specific tone he'd assigned to urgent business calls. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. We're not done here. Yes, we are. I picked up my phone, holding it like a shield. I'm done, Giovanni, with all of this. With you. He answered the call, his attention shifting immediately to whatever crisis required his management. As he turned away, already deep in conversation with whoever was on the other end, I realized with stunning clarity that this was exactly how our marriage had always been. Me desperately trying to make him see me. Him turning away to more important matters. I'd spent 12 years competing with his empire for scraps of his attention, and I'd always lost. I left his study, my legs shaking but my resolve hardening with each step. In our bedroom, I pulled out my suitcase and began packing, my movements automatic. Clothes, toiletries, the few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my mother. Not much in the end. 12 years reduced to a single bag. My phone rang 17 times over the next few hours. Giovanni, calling from whatever room he'd moved to, probably expecting me to answer, to apologize, to return to my designated place. Each time, I silenced the call. Each time, I felt a little more certain that I was doing the right thing. By 3 a.m, the house was silent. I heard Giovanni leave, the rumble of his car in the drive, the sound receding into the distance. Business, probably. Or perhaps he was going to her. To the woman who didn't yet know that being chosen by Giovanni Martelli meant being owned by him. I stood at the bedroom window, looking out at the sea. The moon painted a silver path across the water, leading away from the villa, away from the prison I'd decorated so beautifully. Somewhere out there was a version of Beatrice who still existed, who hadn't been entirely erased by 12 years of being Mrs. Martelli. I picked up my suitcase and walked downstairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. I left the lights on, the doors unlocked. Let Giovanni come home to this. Evidence that I'd been here, that I'd left deliberately, that this was a choice rather than a tragedy. The night air tasted like salt and freedom as I walked down the drive toward the road, toward the unknown. I didn't know where I was going, didn't have a plan beyond getting away from this place. But for the first time in 12 years, I was moving forward because I wanted to, not because I was told to. Behind me, the villa stood against the sky, beautiful and cold. Giovanni's monument to power and control, as empty now as it had always been. I didn't look back. The road from the villa descended in switchbacks toward the coastal town, each turn offering glimpses of the sea, catching moonlight like scattered diamonds. My suitcase wheels rattled against the uneven pavement, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the pre-dawn quiet. I'd walked perhaps 2 kilometers when the first threads of doubt began weaving through my certainty. Where exactly was I going? The question had seemed irrelevant when I was focused on simply leaving, on putting distance between myself and the cage I'd finally recognized. But now, with the adrenaline ebbing and reality asserting itself, the logistics of escape became unavoidable. I had my phone, my mother's jewelry, clothes selected more for their quality than practicality. I had no car. Giovanni controlled all vehicles and their keys. I had credit cards that he could freeze with a single phone call. I had the name Mrs. Martelli, which would be recognized everywhere in this region, making anonymity impossible. I'd been so focused on breaking free that I hadn't considered what came after the breaking. The town square was empty when I reached it, shops shuttered, cafes dark. A stray cat regarded me from atop a fountain, green eyes reflecting my phone's light as I scrolled through contacts, looking for anyone who might help. But Giovanni's influence had been thorough. Friends from before the marriage had drifted away or been deliberately separated from me. The women I'd met through charity functions were acquaintances at best, bound to me only through the social currency Giovanni's name provided. Remove that, and what remained? I sat on the fountain's edge, the stone cold through my thin dress, and forced myself to think strategically. The train station opened at 5. I could buy a ticket to Rome using one of the credit cards before Giovanni thought to cancel them. From Rome, I could access my personal bank account, modest, but mine, containing the small inheritances from my parents that Giovanni had never managed to absorb into his empire. It wouldn't be much, but it would be enough to disappear for a while, to figure out the next step. The plan felt fragile, held together by hope and timing, but it was something. Movement, progress. I was checking the train schedule on my phone when I noticed the messages. Not from Giovanni. Those had stopped after the 17th call. These were from Hazel, sent over the past hour. Mrs. Martelli, please let me know you're safe. He came back. He's very angry. He has people looking for you. Be careful. My hand trembled slightly as I typed a response. I'm fine. Thank you for everything, Hazel. I'm sorry to leave you to deal with the aftermath. Her reply came within seconds. Don't apologize. You did what you needed to do. But Beatrice, and here she used my name, not my title. Be very careful. He's making calls, activating his network. You know what he's capable of when he feels he's lost control. I did know. I'd seen what happened to business partners who betrayed him, to competitors who challenged him, to anyone who threatened his carefully constructed empire. Giovanni didn't tolerate defiance. He eliminated it, one way or another. The fact that I'd been his wife for 12 years wouldn't protect me from that fundamental aspect of his nature. If anything, it made the betrayal worse in his eyes. I'd belonged to him, and I'd chosen to stop belonging. Another message from Hazel. He's saying you're mentally unstable, that you need help. He's already called Dr. Ricci. Dr. Ricci, the private physician Giovanni kept on retainer, the one who wrote prescriptions and medical reports according to whatever Giovanni required. Of course, that would be his strategy. Paint me as hysterical, mentally unwell, incapable of rational decision-making. It discredited anything I might say about him while providing justification for forcing me back under his control. A concerned husband trying to help his troubled wife. The narrative practically wrote itself. I stood, grabbing my suitcase, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. The town square, with its open spaces and streetlights, felt like a stage. Giovanni had security cameras throughout the region, connections to local police, eyes everywhere. Staying here was foolish. I needed to move, to reach the train station early, to be on the first train out before his network fully mobilized. The walk to the station took 40 minutes, my feet protesting in shoes designed for aesthetic rather than function. By the time I reached the platform, the sky was just beginning to lighten, dawn painting the horizon in shades of rose and gold. Beautiful, like everything in this region. Beauty that masked corruption, that made people forget to ask hard questions about where money came from and what it had bought. The ticket booth wouldn't open for another 30 minutes. I found a bench in a shadowed corner, trying to make myself small, invisible. Early morning travelers began arriving. A handful of commuters, a young couple with backpacks, an elderly woman with a shopping bag. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the woman hunched on the bench nearby was fleeing from a man whose power could reshape their reality if he chose to notice them. My phone buzzed. Not Hazel this time. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or perhaps the hope that someone might offer help, made me accept the call. Beatrice. The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. My name is Eric Silva. I work for your husband. He's asked me to locate you and facilitate your safe return home. Everything in his tone suggested concern, efficiency, helpfulness, but I'd learned to hear the machinery behind pleasant words. I'm not coming back. I understand you're upset. Mr. Martelli explained that you've been under tremendous stress lately. He's very worried about you, as are we all. If you'll just tell me where you are, I can have a car there within minutes to bring you home. Dr. Ricci is standing by to provide whatever support you need. The script was so obvious it would have been laughable if it weren't terrifying. Support, in this context, probably meant sedation and confinement until I could be convinced or coerced back into compliance. Tell Giovanni I'm filing for divorce. He can have his lawyer contact mine once I've retained one. Mrs. Martelli, I don't think you understand the complexity of your situation. Your husband controls considerable resources, access to your accounts, your property, even your health care. Acting impulsively right now could have serious consequences for you. Let us help you. Come home, rest, think about this more carefully. I've been thinking about it for 12 years. I'm done thinking. I ended the call and immediately turned off my phone, removing the SIM card the way I'd once seen in a movie. Probably too late. They'd already triangulated my position if they were competent. But at least they couldn't track me in real time from this point forward. The ticket booth opened. I approached with what I hoped was casual confidence, requesting a ticket to Rome on the next train. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, processed the transaction without particular interest. The credit card went through. I accepted the ticket with hands that wanted to shake but didn't, and returned to my shadowed bench to wait. 20 minutes. The first train departed in 20 minutes. Each second felt like an hour. A black car pulled into the station parking lot. My heart stopped, then resumed at triple speed. But the car disgorged only a businessman with a briefcase, hurrying toward the platform with the focused urgency of someone who traveled this route daily. Not Giovanni's people. Just coincidence. I needed to stop seeing threats everywhere, or I'd fracture before I even made it out of the region. The train appeared on the horizon, its headlight cutting through the morning mist. Relief flooded through me with physical force, making my legs weak. I stood, gripping my suitcase handle, positioning myself to board quickly once the doors opened. The businessman boarded first, then the young couple. I was moving toward the door when I saw him. Not Giovanni. He would never handle this personally. But one of his men, someone I'd seen at the villa during security briefings, during the parties where armed men pretended to be waitstaff. He stood at the far end of the platform, phone to his ear, scanning the crowd. His gaze passed over me once, then returned, recognition crystallizing. I stepped onto the train without looking back, moving quickly through the first car toward the second. The doors closed behind me with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like salvation. Through the window, I saw the man running toward the train, but too late. The train was already moving, gathering speed, carrying me away. I found a seat near the back of the second car, positioning myself so I could see anyone approaching from the front. My reflection in the dark window showed a woman I barely recognized. Hair disheveled, dress creased, eyes too wide. Mrs. Martelli had never looked this way. Mrs. Martelli had been maintained, controlled, perfect. The woman in the window looked wild, hunted, alive. The countryside blurred past as the train accelerated. Vineyards and olive groves, ancient stone walls and terracotta roofs. The landscape of my prison, receding with each kilometer. I wanted to feel triumph, victory in having escaped the immediate threat. Instead, I felt the first stirrings of a deeper understanding. This wasn't the end of the pursuit. This was barely the beginning. Giovanni wouldn't stop because I'd made it onto a train. He had resources throughout Italy, throughout Europe. He had connections, people who owed him favors, professionals who could find anyone anywhere. My brief head start would evaporate quickly once he fully focused on the problem of my defiance. The train car was nearly empty. I watched the other passengers, a student with headphones, an elderly man reading a newspaper, a mother managing 2 young children, and wondered if any of them could be watching me. Paranoia, probably. But Giovanni had taught me that paranoia was often just pattern recognition, seeing threats that existed but hadn't yet revealed themselves. I needed a plan beyond simply running. Needed allies, resources, protection. But who could protect someone from a man like Giovanni Martelli? The police? He owned enough of them to make that avenue useless. The courts? His lawyers were legendary for their ability to manipulate legal systems. Private security? Unless I could match his resources, which I couldn't, any protection I hired would be outmatched. The realization settled over me like cold water. There was no safe place. Not really. Not while Giovanni was alive and determined to maintain control over what he considered his. My phone, still powered off, sat in my purse like a grenade. I didn't dare turn it on, but I needed to eventually. Needed to access funds, make arrangements, coordinate the next steps. Each use would be a risk, a beacon announcing my location to anyone monitoring. The train stopped at a small station. More passengers boarded, including a woman in her 50s with silver-threaded dark hair and an expression of professional competence. She took the seat across from me, arranging her bag with economical movements, then pulled out a tablet and began working. Something about her felt different from the other passengers, a quality of alertness, of awareness that extended beyond her immediate task. I told myself I was being paranoid again, but when her gaze flickered toward me, lingering just a moment too long before returning to her screen, my stomach tightened. The train continued. Rome was still 2 hours away. 2 hours of increasing vulnerability, my window of advantage closing with each kilometer. I stood, intending to move to a different car, to put distance between myself and the woman whose attention felt wrong. But as I reached for my suitcase, she spoke. "Mrs. Martelli, please sit down." Her voice was calm, professional, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Not aggressive, but utterly confident. I froze, hand on the suitcase handle, calculating the distance to the door, the possibility of escape. "I'm not here to hurt you," she continued, still not looking up from her tablet. "In fact, I'm here to offer help, but we need to talk quickly. Your husband's people will be waiting at Roma Termini. You won't make it through the station." I remained standing, every muscle tense. "Who are you?" "My name is Carmen Smith. I'm a private investigator specializing in cases like yours. I've been tracking your husband's activities for quite some time." She finally looked up, meeting my eyes with an expression that mixed sympathy and professional assessment. "You're not the first woman he's done this to, Mrs. Martelli. But if you're smart and willing to trust me for the next few hours, you might be the first one who actually escapes." The claim was outrageous, but something in her demeanor, the lack of threat, the detailed knowledge she'd already demonstrated simply by being here, made me hesitate. "What do you mean, not the first woman?" "Sit down," she said again, gesturing to the seat. "And I'll explain. But please, sit. Standing draws attention, and there are at least 2 other people on this train who are definitely working for your husband. They haven't identified you yet, but they will if you keep making yourself obvious." Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I sat. Carmen's attention returned to her tablet, but she spoke quietly. Her words meant only for me. "Before you, there was Alessandra. Before her, Francesca. Before her, going back 15 years, at least 4 other women. They all married Giovanni Martelli thinking they'd found love or security or whatever narrative he fed them. And they all disappeared quietly when they became inconvenient. Divorce, but the kind where the woman receives a settlement in exchange for complete silence and compliance. Non-disclosure agreements, legal restrictions on ever speaking about the marriage or its dissolution. They're bought out of his life and essentially erased. My throat felt tight. "How do you know this?" "Because Alessandra hired me 3 years ago when she started suspecting she was being replaced. She wanted evidence for divorce proceedings. By the time I'd gathered what she needed, she'd already been convinced to take the settlement and disappear. But I kept investigating, because something about the pattern bothered me. And then I found Francesca, and Maria, and Lucia, all following the same trajectory, chosen young, controlled completely, discarded when they developed too much autonomy, or he found someone he liked better. The train swayed around a curve, making me grip the armrest. Why are you telling me this? Because you left before taking the settlement. You ran, which none of the others did. That changes the game. Giovanni can't simply erase you now. You're a loose end, and he doesn't tolerate those. You know too much about his business, his connections, his methods. The fact that you're his wife gives you legal standing he'd prefer you didn't have. And your very public departure last night. Yes, I know about that. Means you can't simply vanish quietly. Too many people know you left. Too many witnesses. So I'm in more danger now because I ran? You're in different danger. More immediate, but also more opportunity. If you're willing to fight instead of hiding, there are people who would very much like to talk with you about what you've witnessed during your marriage. People who've been trying to build cases against Giovanni Martelli for years, but who lack the inside testimony that could actually make charges stick. She meant law enforcement. Prosecutors. The ones Giovanni had spent years bribing and intimidating and staying 10 steps ahead of. She was suggesting I become an informant, a witness, a threat to everything Giovanni had built. "He'll kill me," I said flatly. "If I testify against him, he'll have me killed." "Probably he'll try," Carmen agreed with disturbing casualness. "Which is why witness protection exists. New identity, new location, resources to start over completely. It's not perfect, and it's not easy. But it's better than spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder while trying to survive on whatever savings you've managed to hide." The mother with 2 children moved past us toward the bathroom, her younger child crying about something. Normal life, continuing obliviously. I envied them with sudden fierce intensity, the simplicity of their concerns, the absence of men like Giovanni from their reality. "Why should I trust you?" I asked Carmen. "For all I know, you work for him. This whole thing could be a setup." "It could be," she acknowledged. "But it's not. Here's what I can prove." She turned her tablet toward me, showing a photograph of Giovanni with a woman I didn't recognize. "This is Francesca Greco, his third wife, photographed 3 months before she disappeared from public life. Notice anything familiar?" The restaurant was the same one from the photos sent to my phone. The intimacy of Giovanni's posture was identical, history repeating itself with different actors. And here, another photo, this time showing multiple women's faces in a grid. These are all the women I've identified who were involved with Giovanni Martelli and subsequently vanished from their previous lives. Some took settlements, some just disappeared. I've spent 3 years documenting this pattern because eventually, someone was going to be smart enough or desperate enough to fight back. You're that person, Mrs. Martelli. The question is whether you're brave enough to finish what you started when you walked out last night. The train began slowing for another station. Carmen checked her watch, then looked at me directly. "In 10 minutes, we arrive at Civitavecchia. Your husband has people at Roma Termini, but he can't cover every small station between here and there. If you get off with me, I can have you somewhere safe within an hour, meeting with prosecutors who've been building a case against him for 18 months. They need your testimony. They need someone who's been inside his operation, who can connect financial records to actual criminal activities, who can put faces to names and names to crimes. And if I don't, if I stay on the train, then you'll be intercepted at Roma Termini. You'll be taken somewhere, probably back to the villa, possibly to a private hospital where Dr. Ricci can officially declare you mentally unfit. And this chance, this window where you actually have options, will close. Giovanni will control the narrative completely, and you'll be exactly where you were 12 hours ago, except now he'll be watching you much more carefully." The train was definitely slowing. Through the window, I could see the Civitavecchia station approaching. Decision time. Trust this woman I'd never met who knew far too much about my life, or continue alone toward a destination I now knew was compromised. Neither option felt safe, but one at least offered the possibility of fighting back, of doing more than simply running until I was caught. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "I'll go with you." Carmen's expression didn't change, but something in her posture relaxed slightly. "Good. When we exit, walk normally. Don't run. Don't look around frantically. We're just 2 women getting off at their stop. My car's in the parking lot. Blue Fiat, 3rd row. We'll be in motion before anyone on this train can make a phone call." The train stopped. We stood, gathered our bags, moved toward the door with the casual, unhurried motion of people who'd taken this route 100 times before. My heart hammered against my ribs, but externally, I maintained the calm facade that 12 years as Mrs. Martelli had trained into me. The platform was nearly empty. Early morning, midweek, small station. We walked past the ticket booth, past the waiting room, into the parking lot where the blue Fiat waited exactly where Carmen had described. She opened the doors, and I slid into the passenger seat, pulling my suitcase onto my lap because there was no time to load it properly. Carmen started the engine, backed out of the space, navigated toward the exit with practiced ease. Only when we were on the main road, the station receding behind us, did I allow myself to believe we'd actually made it off the train without incident. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Safe house outside Tarquinia. About 30 minutes from here. The prosecutors I mentioned are already there, waiting. They'll explain everything. What they have, what they need, what protection they can offer." Carmen glanced at me briefly before returning her attention to the road. "And Mrs. Martelli? You should know that once you start talking, once you officially agree to cooperate, there's no going back. Giovanni will know you've become a threat. Whatever restraint he might have shown before, that will disappear. He already wants me back under his control. How much worse can it get? Carmen's smile was grim. You'd be surprised, but for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Sometimes the only way out is through, even when through looks like fire. We drove in silence for several minutes, the morning sun climbing higher, burning off the coastal mist. I watched the landscape pass. Ancient ruins scattered across fields, modern buildings mixed with structures centuries old. Italy was like that, past and present layered together, impossible to separate. My phone, still powered off, felt like a bomb in my purse. Giovanni would be desperate to contact me by now, to regain control of the narrative. He'd be making calls, activating networks, applying pressure to every point where I might appear. The man who'd been my husband for 12 years, who'd claimed to love me in his way, would now devote all his considerable resources to forcing me back into the cage I'd escaped. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 12 years I'd wanted Giovanni to focus on me, to see me as more than an acquisition or an accessory. Now I finally had his full attention, and it was the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to me. We turned off the main road onto a smaller track leading toward a farmhouse set back from the highway, partially hidden by olive trees. Security cameras were visible on the corners of the building. A black car sat in the drive. That's the prosecutor's vehicle, Carmen said. They're already here. Are you ready? Was I ready to betray everything Giovanni had built? To become the evidence that might finally bring down his empire? To transform from decorative wife to dangerous witness? I thought about the photographs on my phone, about the 17 calls I'd silenced, about the woman in the restaurant who would eventually discover what I'd learned. I thought about 12 years of existing without living, of being beautiful and empty and utterly controlled. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Carmen parked the car, and together we walked toward the farmhouse door, toward whatever came next. Behind us, somewhere in the distance, Giovanni was mobilizing his empire to find me. But ahead, for the first time in 12 years, was the possibility of something more than survival. Ahead was the chance to fight back. The door opened before we reached it. A man in his 40s, wearing a suit slightly rumpled from travel, extended his hand. Mrs. Martelli, he said, thank you for coming. I'm Prosecutor Antonio Greco. If you're willing to talk with us, I believe we can finally bring your husband to justice. I shook his hand, feeling the irrevocable shift from victim to threat, from possession to person. Where do we start? I asked. He smiled. At the beginning, tell us everything. The farmhouse interior smelled of coffee and old stone, comfortable in a way the villa had never been despite its luxury. Prosecutor Greco led me to a wooden table where another man sat with a laptop and recording equipment. Carmen disappeared into what looked like a kitchen, returning with espresso in mismatched cups. This is Investigator Paolo Monti, Greco said, gesturing to his colleague. We've been building a case against your husband for 18 months. We have financial records, surveillance transcripts, testimony from several of his associates who've agreed to cooperate. But what we're missing is someone who can connect the documents to actual events, who can verify that specific transactions corresponded to specific criminal activities. I wrapped my hands around the espresso cup, its warmth grounding me. I don't know much about his business operations. He kept me separate from that world. But you observed things, Monty said, his voice gentle. You attended dinners, met his associates, overheard conversations. You lived in the heart of his empire for 12 years. Trust me, you know more than you think. Greco opened a folder, spreading photographs across the table. Men's faces, some I recognized, many I didn't. Let's start simple. Can you identify which of these people visited your home over the past few years? I leaned forward, studying the images. Him, I said, pointing to a silver-haired man with cold eyes. He came to dinner about 6 months ago. Giovanni called him Luca. They talked in the study for several hours after we ate. Luca Marino, Greco confirmed, making a note. Regional coordinator for Martelli's money laundering operations. What was the date, if you remember? I closed my eyes, reconstructing the evening. October 14th. I remember because it was my birthday, though no one mentioned it. They served ossobuco because Giovanni wanted to impress his guest. And you heard nothing of their conversation? Giovanni always sent me away when he discussed business. But I remember Luca was agitated when they came out. He kept saying something about containers and timing issues. And Giovanni was angry, though he hid it well. I saw it in how tightly he held his wine glass. This was how we worked for the next 3 hours, Greco and Monty showing me photographs, documents, timelines, and me filling in details that seemed insignificant in isolation, but apparently formed patterns when combined with what they already knew. Names matched to faces, dates confirmed or corrected, conversations remembered in fragments. I hadn't realized how much I'd observed over 12 years of careful invisibility. All those dinners where I'd been decorative but effectively dismissed. All those business associates who'd spoken freely around me because Giovanni's wives were trained not to listen, not to question. I'd been absorbing information without realizing it, building an archive of evidence in my memory. This is extraordinary, Greco said after we'd been working for hours. Mrs. Martelli, what you're providing corroborates financial transactions we could only speculate about. With your testimony, we can actually prove where money came from, where it went, who was involved. Will it be enough? I asked. To actually arrest him? To make charges stick? The prosecutors exchanged glances. With what we have now, plus your testimony? Yes. We can bring charges for money laundering, tax evasion, possibly racketeering. The evidence is substantial. But Greco hesitated. I need to be honest with you about what testifying means. Your husband has excellent lawyers. A trial could take years. During that time, you'll be in witness protection, but he'll be free on bail, able to use all his resources to pressure you to recant or simply disappear. And if we lose, if he's acquitted, you'll have made an enemy of a very dangerous man while losing the legal protection that kept you relatively safe. Relatively safe, I repeated. I was never safe. I was controlled. There's a difference. I understand. I just need you to understand the risks before you commit fully to cooperation. I looked at the photographs still scattered across the table. All those men who comprised Giovanni's empire. Then I pulled out my phone, powered it on briefly to download the images that had started all this. Giovanni with Melissa. Giovanni replacing me while pretending our marriage still mattered. He's been systematically erasing women for 15 years, I said, showing them the photograph Carmen had shared on the train. I'm just the latest one. If I don't stop him, there will be more. Women who trust him, who think they're entering a marriage when they're really entering a cage. Someone has to break the pattern. Monty's expression softened. Then we'll do everything we can to protect you while we build the strongest case possible. Carmen appeared in the doorway. I hate to interrupt, but we have a situation. Someone accessed Mrs. Martelli's phone location before she powered down. They know she was in Civitavecchia 2 hours ago. Giovanni's people are expanding their search radius. How long do we have? Greco asked. Impossible to say. Could be hours, could be minutes. This safe house is secure, but the longer we stay, the greater the risk. I stood, suddenly aware of how exposed we all were. My escape had seemed dramatic at the time, walking away from the villa, buying a train ticket, believing motion equaled progress. But Giovanni's network was closing around us, narrowing possibilities with each passing hour. Where can I go that his influence doesn't reach? I asked, already knowing the answer. Nowhere in Italy, Greco admitted. His connections are too extensive here. But we have arrangements with witness protection programs in other EU countries. Once we formally enter you into protection, we can move you somewhere outside his usual operational sphere. Northern Europe, probably. Scandinavia. I've never been to Scandinavia. Don't speak the languages. You'll learn, and you won't be completely alone. There are support systems, resources. It's not ideal, but it's survival. Survival. For 12 years, I'd been surviving. Existing, really, in a state of suspended animation. Now I was being offered actual survival, the difficult kind that required active participation rather than passive endurance. How quickly can we move? I asked. There are processes, paperwork. Normally it takes days to properly arrange witness protection. But given the immediate threat... Greco pulled out his phone, stepping away to make a call. Carmen touched my elbow, guiding me toward the window where we could watch the driveway. You're doing the right thing, she said quietly. I know it doesn't feel like it now. It probably won't feel like it for months. But every woman Giovanni victimizes from this point forward, you'll have helped. That matters. Through the window, the olive grove swayed in afternoon wind. Somewhere beyond this isolated farmhouse, Giovanni was orchestrating my recapture. He would be methodical, strategic, applying pressure to every weak point in whatever new life I tried to build. The man who'd once showered me with flowers and expensive gifts was now deploying those same obsessive attention to detail toward destroying me. My phone buzzed. I'd forgotten to turn it back off after showing the prosecutors the photos. A message from Hazel. He knows you talk to prosecutors. He's making arrangements. Please be careful. I showed Carmen the message. How could he possibly know that already? He has people everywhere. Police, government officials, probably some prosecutors' offices. Someone saw something, made a call. Or he's simply assuming the worst and acting accordingly. What kind of arrangements? Carmen's expression was grim. Nothing good. When men like Giovanni feel they're losing control, they become unpredictable. Dangerous in ways they usually aren't because they're too calculating. Right now, he's not calculating. He's reacting. Greco returned, his face set. We have a problem. There's been a complication with the witness protection request. It's going to take at least 48 hours to process properly, and we don't have that kind of time. We need to move you now, but to where is the question? I know a place, Carmen said suddenly. Off the books, not connected to any official channels. It's not perfect, but it'll buy us time. Where? I asked. An old lighthouse on the coast north of here. Abandoned officially, but I maintain it as an emergency sanctuary for exactly these situations. Remote, defensible, no paper trail leading to it. We can get you there by boat, avoiding roads entirely. Greco looked skeptical. An abandoned lighthouse? That's your solution? Better than anywhere Giovanni's people will think to look. They'll be watching train stations, bus terminals, airports, hotels. They'll be assuming she'll try to flee the region or hide in a city. The last place they'll search is a supposedly abandoned structure in a remote coastal location. How long can she stay there? Long enough for you to finish the witness protection paperwork. 3 days, maybe 4. There's food, water, basic supplies. It's not comfortable, but it's survivable. I looked between them. Carmen's determined confidence, Greco's concerned calculation. Neither option was good, but one at least existed outside the systems Giovanni had spent years infiltrating. I'll go to the lighthouse, I decided. If it buys time for the legal protection to be arranged properly, it's worth the isolation. Greco nodded reluctantly. All right, but we continue working on the official channels. And Mrs. Martelli, take this. He handed me a phone different from my own. Secure line. It can't be tracked or monitored. You can reach me, Monty, or Carmen through programmed numbers. Don't use it except for emergencies. But if you need help, we'll know immediately. I took the phone. this new lifeline to a world I'd never imagined being part of. Prosecutors and investigators and safe houses and witness protection. This morning I'd been a trophy wife contemplating divorce. By afternoon, I'd become a state witness hiding from a criminal empire. "We need to move now," Carmen said. "Every minute we delay increases the risk." We gathered quickly. My suitcase, some additional supplies Monty pulled from a storage closet, bottles of water. The prosecutors would stay behind to continue their work. Carmen and I would drive to a small marina where she had a boat waiting. As we prepared to leave, Greco caught my arm. "Mrs. Martelli, Beatrice, what you're doing requires tremendous courage. I want you to know that. Many people talk about wanting justice, but few are willing to pay the price it demands. Thank you." I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified and improvising and desperately hoping I wouldn't be dead within a week, but I nodded, accepting his words because he needed to give them even if I couldn't fully receive them. Carmen drove fast but carefully, taking back roads I didn't recognize, checking her mirrors constantly. "If we're being followed, I'll know," she said. "I've done this enough times to recognize the signs." "How many women have you helped escape dangerous marriages?" "You'd be surprised. Or maybe you wouldn't. There's an entire infrastructure for this. Safe houses, emergency transport, lawyers who specialize in protective orders. Most women don't need witness protection, just a clean break and legal barriers. But every few years, someone like you comes along. Someone married to the kind of man who doesn't accept loss. Those cases are more complicated." "Do they usually survive?" I asked, then immediately regretted the question. Carmen's pause before answering told me everything. "Define survive. Do they live?" "Usually if they're smart and careful." "Do they ever stop looking over their shoulders?" "Rarely." We reached the marina, if it could even be called that. More like a collection of weathered docks with small boats bobbing in gentle waves. Carmen led me to a modest speedboat with a covered cabin, helping me aboard before untying the moorings. The engine roared to life, and we pulled away from the dock, heading north along the coastline. The sun was lowering toward the horizon now, painting the water in shades of amber and rose. Beautiful, like everything in this country. Beauty that existed independent of human suffering, indifferent to the dramas playing out beneath its aesthetic perfection. "The lighthouse is about an hour up the coast," Carmen shouted over the engine noise. "No one's lived there for 20 years. Officially condemned due to structural issues, but actually perfectly sound. I've reinforced it over the years for exactly this purpose. An hour of open water, exposed and visible to anyone watching the coast." I tried not to think about Giovanni's resources, about how many people might be searching right now. Tried to focus instead on the immediate sensation. Wind against my face, salt spray, the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull. The lighthouse appeared as the sun touched the horizon, a solitary white tower rising from rocky coastline. Just as Carmen had described. Abandoned looking, paint peeling, surrounded by warning signs about structural danger. But as we approached a small cove below it, I could see that someone had maintained a path up to the structure, steps cut into the rock face. Carmen cut the engine, letting us drift into the cove before dropping anchor. "From here we climb. Can you manage your suitcase?" I looked at the path, steep and precarious. "I'll manage." We secured the boat and began ascending, Carmen moving with practiced confidence while I struggled behind her, my dress and inappropriate shoes making every step treacherous. By the time we reached the lighthouse entrance, I was breathing hard, and my hands were scraped from grabbing at rocks for balance. Carmen unlocked a heavy door, new hardware despite the aged appearance, and led me inside. The lower level had been converted into living quarters. Simple but functional. A bed, a table, storage crates containing supplies, a chemical toilet in one corner. A battery-powered lantern provided light. Windows offered views of the sea in multiple directions. "It's not the villa," Carmen said dryly, reading my expression. It's perfect, I replied, and meant it. Here, at least, I would see Giovanni's people coming. Here, I controlled the space rather than being controlled by it. Carmen showed me the supplies: non-perishable food, water, basic first aid, the secure phone Greco had given me. I'll check on you tomorrow evening. If you need anything before then, use the phone. But try to stay off it. Every transmission is a potential vulnerability. After she left, descending back to her boat and disappearing into the gathering dusk, I stood at the window watching the sea turn from copper to silver as the sun fully set. Alone for the first time since leaving the villa, I allowed myself to fully feel the enormity of what I'd done. I'd destroyed my marriage, betrayed my husband. If a man like Giovanni could truly be betrayed by someone he'd never honestly partnered with. Agreed to testify against him in court, to help build the case that would hopefully end his criminal empire. And now I stood in an abandoned lighthouse, hiding from the man who'd once promised to love me forever, who'd meant instead that he would possess me forever. The night deepened. Stars emerged, brilliant in the absence of light pollution. I ate something from a can without tasting it, then lay on the narrow bed, listening to waves crash against rocks below. For 12 years, I'd existed in beautiful spaces. The villa, luxury hotels, expensive restaurants. I'd been surrounded by comfort and aesthetic perfection. And I'd been more alone than I was now, in this rough tower with peeling paint and basic provisions. The secure phone buzzed. A message from Hazel. You're still alive. That's something. He's absolutely insane right now. Broke 3 pieces of furniture. I've never seen him this angry. Please stay hidden. I typed back. I'm safe. Tell him nothing if he asks about me. I would never. You know that. I did know that. Hazel had been one of the few genuinely kind presences in my prison. Someone who'd witnessed my gradual erasure and offered what small solidarities she could. Sleep eluded me despite exhaustion. Every sound, wind against the tower, waves, creaking stone, might be Giovanni's people discovering my location. Dawn came slowly, light spreading across the water like spilled mercury. I climbed the interior stairs to the lighthouse's lamp room, curious what view had guided ships for however many years this tower had operated. The glass was grimy but intact, offering a panoramic perspective of coastline stretching in both directions. Empty sea. No boats approaching. No one had found me yet. The day passed in strange suspension. I had books from Carmen's supplies, but couldn't focus enough to read. I had food, but no appetite. I had time, but nothing to fill it with except thoughts that circled endlessly through the same territory. Fear, regret, determination, doubt. By afternoon, I was climbing the walls of the lighthouse metaphorically and literally, pacing the circumference of the lamp room, watching the sea for any sign of approaching threat or promised rescue. The secure phone rang. Actually rang. Not just buzzed with a text. Greco's number. Are you safe? He asked without preamble. Yes. Still here. Still alone. Good. We've made progress on the protection arrangements. 48 hours more, maybe slightly less. Can you hold out? Do I have a choice? Always. You could still walk away from this. Try to negotiate with your husband directly. No, I said firmly. I couldn't. I've gone too far for that. He'd never trust me again. Never let me have any autonomy. Better to finish what I started. That's what I needed to hear. Because Beatrice, there's something you should know. Giovanni's offering a substantial reward for information on your location. €500,000 to anyone who helps him find you. That's going to make people very motivated to look. €500,000. More than most people would earn in a lifetime. The number made my isolation in the lighthouse suddenly feel desperately fragile. Does Carmen know? I'm calling her next. She'll take extra precautions. But you should be aware that the next 48 hours are critical. After that, you'll be officially protected, moved outside his reach. Until then, you're vulnerable. After he hung up, I stood at the window watching the sun descend again toward the horizon. One day down, 2 more to survive. I thought about Giovanni in the villa, surrounded by luxury and power, orchestrating the hunt for me with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. I thought about the woman in the photographs, Melissa, who would eventually discover what I'd learned. I thought about all the women before me, who'd simply accepted their settlements and disappeared quietly. And I thought about who I might become if I survived this. Not Mrs. Martelli anymore. Not the decorative trophy wife, but someone else entirely. Someone who'd chosen the hard path because it was the only path that didn't lead back to the cage. The second night fell. I secured the door, checked the windows, positioned myself where I could see both sea approaches. The secure phone stayed in my pocket. Carmen's promise of tomorrow's check-in my only connection to the world beyond this tower. I was alone. Truly alone. For the first time in my adult life, no one controlled my movements, my choices, my voice. It was terrifying. It was the beginning of freedom. The dawn of the second day brought fog, thick and gray, reducing visibility to mere meters. I stood in the lamp room watching it roll across the water like a living thing, obscuring the boundary between sea and sky. The isolation that had felt liberating yesterday now felt oppressive. In this white void, anything could approach unseen. I'd slept poorly again, waking at every sound, my mind constructing threats from innocent noises. The tower creaked as stone expanded with temperature changes. Wind whistled through gaps in the weathered structure. Each sound became a potential intruder in my imagination. Giovanni's men scaling the rocks, Carmen returning with bad news, the prosecutors changing their minds about protection. By mid-morning, the fog began to lift, revealing a sea that stretched empty in all directions. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new anxiety. If I could see approaching vessels, they could see the lighthouse. My isolation was both shield and exposure. The secure phone buzzed. Carmen, weather delayed my departure. We'll reach you by evening instead of afternoon. Stay alert. Nothing to worry about. Just routine precaution. Nothing to worry about. Easy for her to say from wherever she was, connected to normal life, able to move freely. I was trapped in a tower waiting for either rescue or discovery, depending on who arrived first. I rationed the supplies carefully, unsure how long I might need them to last. Ate sparingly from cans that all tasted the same regardless of their labels. Drank water measured precisely. Tried to make my body smaller, less demanding, as though consuming less would make me less vulnerable. The afternoon stretched endlessly. I tried to occupy myself by cleaning the lamp room, using seawater and cloth scraps to remove decades of grime from the glass. The work was meditative, focusing my attention on immediate tasks rather than spiraling anxieties. Slowly, the view improved, offering clearer sight of the coastline. That's when I saw them. 2 boats, moving parallel to shore, methodically scanning. Too far to identify specific occupants, but the pattern of their search was unmistakable. They were looking for something. For someone. For me. I descended quickly to the living quarters, pulling back from the windows, trying to remember if I'd done anything to make the lighthouse look occupied. The door was secured. The windows showed only interior darkness. From the outside, it should appear exactly as abandoned as it was supposed to be. But Giovanni's people would be thorough. They might investigate every structure along this coastline, checking even seemingly impossible locations. The secure phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to use it. Carmen answered on the first ring. "There are boats," I said without greeting. 2 of them, searching the coastline, moving north to south. "How far from your location?" "Maybe 2 kilometers. I can see them clearly through the lamp room glass." "Get down from the lamp room. Stay low, away from windows. Don't use lights after dark. I'm leaving now, but I'm at least 90 minutes away. You need to stay invisible until I arrive. What if they decide to investigate the lighthouse? Then you hide. There's a storage compartment built into the floor beneath the bed. I showed you yesterday, remember? It's small, but you'll fit. If they come ashore, you get in there and don't make a sound no matter what you hear. The storage compartment. I'd noticed it during Carmen's tour but hadn't fully registered its significance. Now it loomed in my mind as simultaneously salvation and tomb, a space barely large enough for a person to curl into, designed for exactly this scenario. Carmen, I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you alert, but don't let it paralyze you. You've survived this long by being smart. Keep being smart for 90 more minutes. After she disconnected, I stood frozen, mind racing through options. The boats were still distant, their search pattern methodical, but not yet focused on this specific section of coast. They might pass by without stopping, or they might investigate every potentially useful landmark. I moved the bed, revealing the storage compartment beneath. The space was perhaps a meter square and half a meter deep, large enough to hold a person in fetal position, small enough to be nearly undetectable. Carmen had provisioned it with a bottle of water and a flashlight, though using light while hiding would defeat the purpose. If I went into that space, I would be blind and deaf to what happened above me, vulnerable to being discovered while unable to defend myself or escape. But the alternative, being visible when Giovanni's people arrived, was infinitely worse. I returned to the window, watching the boat's progress. They'd covered perhaps a third of the distance, moving slowly. But something about their pattern had changed. One boat had separated from the other, angling closer to shore. My phone buzzed again. Hazel this time. He's mobilized everyone, every person who owes him anything. The reward is now 1 million euros. Please be careful. 1 million euros. The number was absurd, devastating. At that price, even people with no connection to Giovanni's empire would be motivated to search. Every fisherman, every coastal resident, every person struggling financially would suddenly have an incentive to look for a woman matching my description. I typed back quickly, I know, I'm hiding. Thank you for the warning. The separated boat was definitely approaching now, heading toward the rocky cove below the lighthouse. My heart began racing, adrenaline flooding my system with the urgency to run, despite having nowhere to run to. I grabbed my suitcase, the secure phone, a bottle of water, moved back toward the bed and the compartment beneath it, hesitated. Once I went into that space, I was committed. I couldn't reassess, couldn't change strategy. I would simply have to wait in darkness, hoping the searchers would find nothing and move on. The sound of an engine cutting reached me even through the tower's thick walls. They'd reached the cove. I lowered myself into the compartment, pulling the suitcase in after me, trying to make everything fit in the cramped space. The bed frame had been designed to sit flush with the floor when lowered, concealing the compartment completely. I reached up, guided the frame back into place, and was plunged into absolute darkness. The space was smaller than I'd remembered. My knees pressed against my chest. My head was bent at an uncomfortable angle. The air was already feeling close, thick with the scent of stone and earth and my own fear sweat. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, so loud I was certain it would give me away. Tried to control my breathing, to make each inhale and exhale silent and shallow. Tried not to think about being trapped in this space if something happened to Carmen, if she didn't arrive, if the storage compartment's mechanism somehow failed. Footsteps on the stairs outside the tower. Voices, male, speaking Italian I could barely hear through the stone in the bed frame. The door rattled as someone tried it, then a heavier sound, something being used to force it open. They were coming inside. I pressed my hand over my mouth, terrified that even my breathing might be audible. The compartment was utterly dark. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, couldn't do anything but listen and wait and hope. More footsteps, multiple people now, moving through the lower level. Something scraped across the floor, furniture being moved, voices directly above me, words I couldn't quite distinguish, but tones I understood. Frustration, thoroughness, determination. They were searching the space systematically. A weight settled onto the bed above me. Someone sitting down. The frame creaked, pressing slightly lower. I held absolutely still, not daring even to adjust my cramped position. Sweat ran down my face. The urge to cough built in my throat. The dusty air, the stress, my body's determined rebellion against this forced stillness. Nothing here. One voice said clearly, close enough now that I could understand. Just an empty tower like every other abandoned structure we've checked. Let's check the upper levels anyway. Be thorough. Footsteps ascending the interior stairs. More sounds from above, muffled through stone. I remained frozen in my dark box, minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Eventually, the footsteps returned, descending. The voices moved away from directly above me. The doors sound again, then silence. I wanted desperately to believe they'd left. But I'd learned not to trust obvious conclusions. I waited, counting seconds, controlling my breathing, listening for any indication that someone had stayed behind while others had left. 10 minutes. 20. The urge to move, to escape the crushing confines of the compartment, was becoming unbearable. But still, I waited. When my phone buzzed in the darkness, I nearly screamed, fumbled for it with cramped fingers, the screen's glow painfully bright in the absolute dark. Carmen, I see the boat leaving your cove. Are you safe? I couldn't type while contorted in the storage space. Had to risk pushing up the bed frame, emerging into the blessed air and relative space of the lower level. My joints protested as I unfolded myself, muscles screaming from the prolonged tension. Yes. They searched but didn't find the compartment. How close are you? 10 minutes. Stay down until I arrive. There might be others. The 10 minutes were excruciating. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, the bed frame still displaced, the storage compartment visible like an open mouth in the floor. Every sound from outside might be another boat arriving, another search team. But I couldn't bring myself to return to that dark space unless absolutely necessary. When I finally heard Carmen's engine approaching, relief nearly buckled my knees. I watched from the window as she navigated into the cove, tied off, began ascending the rocky path. She found me sitting on the floor, trembling despite my best efforts at control. They were here, I said unnecessarily. They searched. I was in the compartment. I know. I saw their boat leaving as I approached. She knelt beside me, her expression serious. Beatrice, we need to move you tonight. Giovanni's people are being more thorough than I anticipated. This location was safe when it was one possibility among hundreds. Now that they've actually been here and searched, they might return with different equipment, with people who know about hidden compartments. Where can we go? I have one more option, more risky because it's not isolated, but paradoxically safer because of that. A small hotel in a tourist town north of here. You'll be one person among hundreds. Giovanni's people can't search every tourist without drawing attention they don't want. Won't they be watching hotels? The obvious ones, yes. But this is a family-run place. 20 rooms. Caters mostly to hiking tourists. You'll be registered under a false name, paying cash. As long as you stay in your room and avoid attracting notice, you should be invisible. It was another roll of the dice, another risk. But staying in the lighthouse after it had been searched felt infinitely more dangerous. How long until witness protection is ready? Carmen checked her phone. Greco says another 36 hours. Day and a half. If we can keep you hidden that long, you're safe. If. Such a small word, carrying such weight. Let's go, I decided, before another search boat decides to circle back. We descended to Carmen's boat as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, turning the water to liquid fire. I took one last look at the lighthouse, the tower that had been both sanctuary and trap, where I'd spent 2 days existing in suspension between one life and another. The boat ride north took an hour, following the coastline as darkness fell. Carmen kept the running lights off, navigating by GPS and memory. We passed other vessels occasionally, fishing boats returning to port, pleasure craft heading toward harbors. Normal life, continuing obliviously. The town Carmen had mentioned appeared as lights scattered across a hillside, small and picturesque, the kind of place tourists visited to experience authentic Italy before returning to their actual lives. We docked at a marina, walking up into the town like any other travelers arriving late. The hotel was exactly as Carmen had described, family-owned, modest, tucked onto a side street away from the main plaza. The elderly woman at the desk barely looked at us, accepting Carmen's cash for a 3-night stay, registered under the name Rosa Bianchi. The room was small but clean, with a window overlooking a courtyard. Nothing like the villa's luxury, but it had something the villa never had. A lock I controlled. "I'll be in the next town over," Carmen said, handing me yet another phone. This one a basic burner, untraceable. "If something goes wrong, if you need to leave immediately, call the top number. I'll be here within 30 minutes. After she left, I stood at the window watching the courtyard below. A cat prowled the perimeter. A couple argued quietly on a balcony. Normal human drama, small and manageable. I was so close to making it. 36 hours until official protection, until Giovanni's reach couldn't extend. 36 hours of remaining invisible in plain sight. I ate from the room service menu, simple pasta, unremarkable wine. Showered in the tiny bathroom, washing away days of fear sweat and accumulated stress. Dressed in the hotel's provided bathrobe, and finally allowed myself to fully acknowledge the exhaustion that had been building since I walked out of the villa 72 hours ago. 72 hours. Only 3 days since I'd been Mrs. Giovanni Martelli. Trophy wife, decorative possession. In that brief span, I'd become a fugitive, a witness, a woman whose testimony could dismantle an empire. The change felt both impossibly fast and achingly slow, as though I'd been preparing for this rupture across 12 years of captivity without consciously knowing it. My phone buzzed, the burner Carmen had given me, but the number wasn't hers. Giovanni. Somehow, he had this number already. Impossible. Unless someone had seen us, followed us, reported our location. Unless the chain of safety I'd trusted was already compromised. I stared at the screen, watching it ring. Giovanni's name a threat in digital letters. I should have ignored it. Every survival instinct screamed not to answer. But 12 years of training, of answering when Giovanni called, of compliance and performed obedience, made my thumb accept the call before conscious thought could stop it. Beatrice. His voice was calm, controlled, utterly devoid of the anger Hazel had described, which somehow made it more terrifying. "We need to talk." "How did you get this number? Does it matter? I always find you. You should understand that by now." My hand shook, holding the phone. Behind me, the hotel room's door was locked, but suddenly that barrier felt desperately thin. "I'm not coming back, Giovanni." "I know. I've come to understand that you've made choices that can't be unmade. That you've involved prosecutors, agreed to testify, committed yourself to destroying everything I've built." His tone remained conversational, almost pleasant. "But I wanted to give you one final opportunity to reconsider before this becomes truly ugly. It's already ugly. It's been ugly for 12 years. I just finally see it clearly. You see what you want to see. A prison. You called our marriage. But Beatrice, You had everything, every luxury, every comfort, complete security, and you've traded that for hiding in cheap hotels, running from people who will eventually find you. I've traded being your possession for being my own person. He laughed softly. Such idealism, such naivete. You think the prosecutors will protect you? That some new identity in a foreign country will give you the life you want? You'll spend every day looking over your shoulder, wondering if that stranger in the cafe works for me. You'll never feel safe because you won't be safe. I have resources you can't imagine, patience you don't understand. I will find you. Eventually. Always. Maybe. But I'd rather spend my life looking over my shoulder in freedom than staring at gilded cages in captivity. Silence on the line. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. No longer conversational, but diamond hard, cutting. You're making a mistake that will cost you everything. But since you're determined to proceed down this path, I want you to know exactly what you're choosing. The prosecutor's case is built on financial records and your testimony. Without you, they have circumstantial evidence that my lawyers will dismantle easily. So you've become the key to their entire prosecution. Do you understand what that makes you, Beatrice? Not a person anymore. A tool. Evidence. Something to be used by one side to attack the other. At least I'll be useful for something real instead of decorative for your benefit. Very well. Since you insist on being useful, let me tell you what comes next. Tomorrow, I will release certain information about your history. Medical records, psychological evaluations, documentation of instability. By the time my lawyers finish, you'll be an unreliable witness with credibility destroyed. The prosecutors will drop you because you've become more liability than asset. And then you'll be alone, Beatrice. Truly alone. No legal protection, no resources, no leverage. Just a woman who betrayed her husband and lost everything in the process. The threat was so calculated, so comprehensive, it took my breath away. Giovanni had always been strategic, but now that strategy focused entirely on destroying me. I'll take my chances with the truth. There's no truth, Kara, only competing narratives, and mine has 12 years of careful construction behind it. Yours has 3 days of desperation. He paused. Last chance. Come home. We'll say you were ill, that stress and hormonal changes caused temporary instability. Dr. Ricci will document it all. You can return to your life, and we'll never speak of this again. My life? You mean your possession. Is there a difference? He said it like a genuine question, as though 12 years hadn't taught him that women were people rather than objects. Think carefully, Beatrice. Think about what you're throwing away. Think about how this ends for you. The line went dead. I stood holding the phone, my whole body shaking now. Not from fear, but from rage so pure it felt like electricity in my veins. He was right about some things. I would never feel completely safe again. The prosecutors were using me as much as Giovanni had, just for different purposes. My life from this point forward would be defined by choices made in these terrible days. But at least they would be my choices. My testimony. My voice, speaking truth that I'd spent 12 years being trained to suppress. I would rather live in uncertainty as myself than in certainty as Giovanni's creation. The next 36 hours stretched ahead like a dark tunnel. At the end was either freedom or destruction. There was no way to know which, until I reached it. But I would reach it on my own terms, moving forward under my own power. For the first time in 12 years, that mattered more than safety. The morning came with sunlight filtering through cheap curtains, casting stripes across the hotel room floor. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying Giovanni's call on an endless loop, analyzing each threat for weakness, searching for cracks in his comprehensive strategy to destroy me. 24 hours. Just 24 more hours until Greco's protection came through. until I could disappear into a new identity somewhere Giovanni's influence couldn't reach. The burner phone remained silent. Neither Carmen checking in, nor Giovanni calling back. The silence felt ominous rather than peaceful, a held breath before violence. I stayed in the room, ordering breakfast from the hotel's limited menu, eating mechanically while watching the courtyard through the window. Normal life continued below. Tourists planning their day, elderly locals sitting with morning coffee, children playing in the fountain. A world that existed parallel to mine, touching but never intersecting. By noon, the isolation was becoming unbearable. I'd spent 3 days hiding, first in a lighthouse, now in a hotel room. The walls were closing in, the air feeling thick and recycled. But leaving the room meant risk, meant being visible, potentially recognizable. I compromised by opening the window, letting in street sounds and fresh air. The town had a market day, apparently. Voices calling out prices, the smell of produce and flowers, the bustle of commerce. Life persisting despite individual dramas, indifferent to my terror. The burner phone finally buzzed mid-afternoon. Carmen, how are you holding up? Getting claustrophobic. But managing. Any news? Greco says everything is on track. Paperwork processing, transportation arranged. Tomorrow afternoon you'll be relocated. Where? Can't say yet. Need to know basis, but somewhere cold. Start thinking about thermal underwear. The attempt at levity felt forced, but I appreciated the effort. Giovanni called last night, said he'll destroy my credibility before trial. Long pause before Carmen's response. He can try, but your testimony corroborates documented evidence. Even if he paints you as unreliable, the financial records don't lie. Don't let him get in your head. Too late. Giovanni was already in my head, had been for 12 years. His voice, his control, his comprehensive understanding of exactly how to break me. Extracting him would take more than a new identity in a cold country. I spent the afternoon trying to distract myself with television. Italian game shows I couldn't follow. News channels reporting crises I couldn't care about. Anything to fill the time between now and tomorrow's promised freedom. The sun descended toward the horizon, the courtyard shadows lengthening. Dinner arrived on another tray. More pasta, more mediocre wine. I was developing a hatred for hotel food, for the sameness that made each meal indistinguishable from the last. As darkness fell, restlessness drove me to the window again. The market had dispersed, vendors packing away their goods, tourists returning to hotels and restaurants. The cat from the previous night reappeared, prowling its territory with feline confidence. I envied that cat. Its concerns were immediate. Food, territory, survival. No 12-year history of captivity weighing on it. No dangerous ex-husband orchestrating its destruction. Just the simplicity of instinct and action. A movement in the courtyard caught my attention. A man standing in shadow near the fountain, his posture alert, watchful. Probably nothing. But probably wasn't certainty. And certainty was the only currency I had left. I backed away from the window, heart accelerating. Watched from the side, positioning myself where I could see without being clearly visible. The man pulled out a phone, spoke briefly, then pocketed it. Looked up at the hotel's windows, scanning systematically across each floor. I grabbed the burner phone, texting Carmen. Someone watching the hotel. Might be nothing. Might be his people. The response came quickly. Stay in your room, lights off. Don't answer the door for anyone except me. I'm 20 minutes away. I killed the lights, plunging the room into darkness. Positioned myself where I could watch the courtyard, while remaining invisible from outside. The man was still there, now joined by a second figure. They weren't being subtle, standing in open sight, radiating intentionality. This was either very good security or very bad threat. My money was on threat. A knock at the door made me jump. Soft, almost tentative, Not housekeeping. Too late in the evening. Ms. Bianchi? A male voice, pleasant, professional. Hotel security. There's been a situation in the building. We need to verify all guests. Hotel security. Possible. But the timing was too convenient. The courtyard watchers, too, coordinated with this knock. I remained silent, barely breathing, hoping whoever was outside would believe the room empty and move on. Ms. Bianchi, we know you're in there. We just need to ask a few questions. Please open the door. The doorknob rattled slightly, testing. The lock was standard hotel issue, functional but not particularly robust. If they wanted in, they'd get in. I backed toward the window, my mind racing through options. The room was on the second floor, jumpable if desperate, though I'd likely break something in the landing. But the courtyard below was watched. I'd be captured before I could run. The bathroom had a window too small to fit through. No balcony, no fire escape. The room was effectively a trap. Ms. Bianchi, I'm going to use my master key now. Don't be alarmed. The distinctive sound of a key in the lock, the door beginning to open. I grabbed the only weapon available, a heavy ceramic lamp from the bedside table, and positioned myself behind the door. If they came through, I'd have one chance to strike before being overwhelmed. The door opened fully. A man entered, silhouetted against the hallway light. Not hotel security. Wrong clothes, wrong bearing. Behind him, another figure waited. The room's empty, the first man said, turning back toward his companion. She must have... I swung the lamp with everything I had, catching him across the temple. He went down hard, crumpling. The second man reacted instantly, lunging through the door toward me. I threw the lamp at his face, using the distraction to sprint past him toward the hallway. Behind me, shouts, heavy footsteps. I ran for the stairs. Down was danger, but so was staying put. Had to move, had to get away, had to reach Carmen. The stairwell was narrow, dimly lit. I took the steps 2 at a time, my inappropriate shoes slipping on polished stone. Behind me, the footsteps were gaining, multiple people now, coordinated pursuit. I burst through the ground floor door into the hotel lobby. The elderly woman at the desk looked up in alarm as I ran past, then her expression shifted to fear as my pursuers emerged from the stairwell. The front entrance was 50 feet away. Might as well have been miles. One of Giovanni's men was already positioned there, blocking the exit. I pivoted toward the back of the hotel, through a door marked staff only, into a kitchen where startled cooks stared as I ran through. Another door, this one leading to an alley. I burst out into the night, finally in open space, running without direction, just away. The alley opened onto a side street. I turned left randomly, then right at the next intersection, trying to lose pursuit through unpredictability. But footsteps echoed behind me, steady and relentless. They knew the town. I didn't. Every turn might lead to a dead end. Every street could be a trap. My phone, still in my pocket. I pulled it out while running, thumbing Carmen's number. They're chasing me. I'm somewhere. I looked at street signs, gasping out words. Via Garibaldi, heading north. I'm almost there. Keep moving toward the marina. You remember which one? Where we arrived? Yes. Barely. Terror was making memory unreliable, making everything except the immediate need to run feel distant and abstract. I turned toward what I hoped was north, toward the water, toward boats and escape. The streets were emptying as evening progressed. Tourists returning to hotels, locals finishing their business. Soon I would be visible in empty streets, no crowd to hide in. A car screeched around a corner ahead of me, blocking the street. Giovanni's people, coordinating, cutting off escape routes. I turned again, down a narrower alley between buildings so close I could touch both walls. The alley terminated at a wall too high to climb. Dead end. Behind me, footsteps approached. Casual now, victorious. They had me cornered. I spun, back against the wall, looking for anything to use as a weapon. Found nothing. Just my body and voice, and the fury that had been building for 12 years. "I'm not going back," I said as the men approached. "You'll have to drag me, and I'll fight every step. I'll scream. I'll make a scene. I'll do everything to make this visible." The lead man, not the one I'd hit with the lamp, a different one, smiled without warmth. "Mrs. Martelli, Mr. Giovanni simply wants to talk, to reach an understanding. No one needs to be hurt." "Then leave. Let me go. Tell him I'm not interested in talking." "I'm afraid that's not an option. You've become a problem that requires resolution. Mr. Giovanni is a reasonable man. Once you speak with him, I'm sure you'll see that cooperation is in everyone's best interest." Behind the lead man, the others formed a wall of inevitability. No escape through them. No way past. Giovanni's network, closing around me after days of running. Then headlights blazed at the alley's entrance, blinding. A car, Carmen's, accelerating toward the cluster of men. They scattered, pressing against walls as the vehicle barreled through, stopping just feet from me. "Get in," Carmen shouted through the open passenger window. I lunged for the door, throwing myself inside. Carmen was already reversing before I'd fully closed it, backing out of the alley at dangerous speed. Giovanni's men regrouped quickly, running toward us. But Carmen executed a flawless reverse turn, the car spinning to face forward, then accelerating away from pursuit. "Are you hurt?" she asked, navigating through narrow streets with practiced expertise. "No, shaken. They were at the hotel." "How did they find me?" "Money and connections. Giovanni put your photo everywhere. Probably someone who works at the hotel recognized you, made a call. €1,000,000 is very motivating." We reached the marina, abandoning the car and running toward Carmen's boat. Behind us, car engines, pursuit continuing. But we reached the dock first, Carmen starting the engine while I cast off lines with clumsy, adrenaline-fueled fingers. The boat pulled away just as Giovanni's men reached the marina. One of them pulled a gun. I saw it in the dock lights, but didn't fire. Too many witnesses, too public. They could chase but not kill. Not here. Not where it would be visible. We accelerated into open water, the town's lights receding behind us. My whole body shook with aftershock, fear draining now that immediate danger had passed. "Where are we going?" I managed. "Greco's arranging emergency extraction. We're meeting a contact up the coast who'll get you to Rome tonight instead of tomorrow. The situation's accelerated. We can't wait another 24 hours. I nodded, unable to form words. Everything had become real in a way it hadn't before. Running had been abstract, theoretical. Now I'd felt their hands reaching for me, heard Giovanni's voice promising destruction. The threat was no longer future tense. It was present, immediate, closing around me with methodical certainty. We rode in silence, the boat's engine loud enough to discourage conversation. Stars emerged overhead, brilliant in their indifference. Beautiful night, terrible circumstances, the usual Italian contradiction. After an hour, Carmen cut the engine, letting us drift near a rocky outcropping where another boat waited, larger, official-looking. "That's our connection," she said. "They'll take you to Rome, get you processed into protection tonight. By morning, you'll be gone." "Gone where?" "I honestly don't know. That's handled above my level. But somewhere far from here. Somewhere Giovanni's reach doesn't extend." I looked at Carmen, this woman I'd known less than a week, who'd risked her own safety to help me, who'd offered alliance when I'd been utterly alone. "Thank you," I said, inadequate but sincere. "For everything. Just survive this, Beatrice. Survive and testify. Make Giovanni's empire pay for what it's done to you and all the women before you. That'll be thanks enough." The transfer happened quickly. Climbing from Carmen's boat to the official vessel, being greeted by serious men in government-issued jackets, being wrapped in a blanket despite the night's relative warmth. Carmen waved once as we pulled away, her boat turning back toward whatever life awaited her after this crisis. I watched her disappear into darkness, then turned my attention forward, toward Rome, toward protection, toward whatever version of freedom waited on the other side of testimony. The official boat moved fast, cutting through dark water with purpose. One of the men, introduced as Agent Rossi, sat beside me, explaining procedures in calm, professional tones. When we arrive in Rome, you'll be taken to a secure facility for final witness prep. Your legal statement will be recorded. Tomorrow, you'll be moved to your relocation destination. After that, you'll have no contact with anyone from your previous life until after the trial. Do you understand? I understood. I was being erased, reformed, given a new shape to fit the needs of prosecution. The woman who'd been Beatrice Martelli would disappear, replaced by someone with a different name, a different history, a different future. It was exactly what I'd asked for. Freedom from Giovanni's control. But sitting on that boat in the darkness, heading toward a future I couldn't imagine, I felt not liberation but vertigo. Everything I'd known, good or bad, was ending. What came after was uncertainty, compounded on uncertainty. "Are you all right?" Agent Rossi asked, noticing my expression. "I don't know," I admitted. "Ask me in a year." "Fair enough," he said with a slight smile. "For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. Men like Martelli don't stop unless someone stops them. You're being very brave." Was I brave, or simply desperate? Did the distinction matter if the outcome was the same? Rome appeared on the horizon, a dome of light against the night sky. The eternal city, where empires rose and fell across millennia. One more was about to fall, brought down not by armies but by a woman's testimony. I hoped I would live long enough to see it collapse. The secure facility in Rome was exactly what I'd imagined a government safe house would be. Deliberately anonymous, comfortable enough to be tolerable, but stripped of any personality that might make it feel like home. The room where I spent the next 18 hours preparing my testimony could have been anywhere, containing only furniture necessary for function. A table, recording equipment, Agent Rossi and 2 prosecutors I hadn't met before. We went through everything. Every dinner party, every overheard conversation, every financial transaction I'd witnessed, every associate I could identify. My 12 years of careful invisibility had been an accidental intelligence-gathering operation. I'd absorbed names, dates, connections without realizing I was doing so. "This is comprehensive," one of the new prosecutors said, reviewing my statement. "With what you've provided, we can connect Martelli to at least 15 separate criminal enterprises. Money laundering, tax evasion, witness intimidation, possibly even 3 unsolved disappearances." "Will it be enough?" I asked. "To actually convict him?" "In combination with the financial records and other testimony we've gathered? Yes, we believe so. He'll go to trial within 6 months, possibly sooner. The case is too strong for his lawyers to dismiss." 6 months. Giovanni would spend that time free on bail, using every resource to either discredit me or eliminate me. The witness protection was supposed to prevent the latter, but supposed to wasn't certainty. By evening, my official statement was complete, recorded, signed. I was no longer just Beatrice Martelli. I was now State Witness 247, identity sealed, testimony classified until trial. "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., you'll be transported to the airport," Agent Rossi explained. "From there, a flight to your relocation destination. Your new identity documents will be provided en route. You'll have support personnel when you arrive, language tutors if necessary, employment assistance, housing arranged. Everything you need to build a new life." What happens to my old life? My things from the villa? Seized as evidence, unfortunately. Anything from your apartment before the marriage? There is no apartment. Giovanni made me give it up when we married. Everything I owned is at the villa. The realization hit me then, fully and completely. I had nothing. Giovanni had systematically ensured that I owned nothing separate from him. No property, no assets, no possessions that predated our marriage. I was stepping into a new life, carrying only the clothes Carmen had helped me buy, and the memories I couldn't abandon. We can provide a small stipend for immediate needs, Rossi offered, seeing my distress. And long-term, the witness protection program includes financial support until you're established in new employment. It was more than nothing. But it wasn't mine. It was government assistance, another form of dependence. I'd escaped Giovanni's control only to become reliant on state protection. Still, better than the alternative. That night, alone in the safe house's generic bedroom, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd done. I'd destroyed my marriage, though it had been destroying me for years. I'd betrayed a man who called it betrayal, though he'd never honored any vow of fidelity or partnership. I'd chosen testimony over silence, exposure over complicity. And tomorrow, I would become someone else entirely. New name, new country, new life built from nothing in a place where no one knew me as Mrs. Giovanni Martelli. Sleep came fitfully. When Agent Rossi knocked at 5:30 a.m., I'd been awake for hours, watching dawn light creep across unfamiliar walls. The drive to the airport was conducted in silence, the darkened SUV cutting through empty early morning streets. Rome passed by my window, ancient architecture mixing with modern, a city that had survived countless empires' rise and fall. One more empire ending today, Giovanni's. The plane wasn't commercial. Too risky. Instead, a small government aircraft with just me, Agent Rossi, and a pilot. We took off into pale sky, climbing above the clouds until Italy disappeared beneath us. "You can open this now," Rossi said, handing me a sealed envelope. Inside were documents, passport, driver's license, birth certificate, all bearing my photograph, but a name I'd never heard before. Emma Laurent, French apparently. Born in Lyon, 34 years old, unmarried, occupation listed as translator. "We've created a complete background for you," Rossi explained. "School records, employment history, tax returns. Everything you'd need to prove identity if questioned. You'll receive training on your cover story during the first week at your destination." "Where is my destination?" He smiled. "You'll see when we land. Somewhere cold, as promised. Somewhere Giovanni Martelli's influence doesn't reach." 3 hours later, we descended through gray clouds toward a landscape of dark water and darker evergreens. The airport was small, functional, the signs in a language I didn't recognize immediately until I remembered Carmen's hint about Scandinavia. Norway. I was being relocated to Norway. We landed, taxied to a private hangar. A woman in her 40s waited inside. Wrapped in a practical coat against the cold, I could feel even through the plane's insulation. "Emma," she greeted me in accented English. "Welcome to your new home. I'm Solveig Hansen. I'll be your case coordinator." Emma, not Beatrice. That woman no longer existed. I had to learn to respond to this new name, to inhabit this new identity as completely as I'd once inhabited Mrs. Martelli. We drove through a landscape so different from Italy it felt alien. Pine forests, fjords, mountains capped with early snow. The light itself was different, cooler, more diffuse. Beautiful, but a beauty that felt distant and reserved compared to the Mediterranean's warmth. "Your apartment is in Bergen," Solveig explained. "Second largest city, international community, easy to blend in. We've enrolled you in intensive Norwegian lessons starting next week. For now, you can manage with English. Most people here speak it well. But eventual fluency will help with integration. Becoming part of this place. Building a life here." It seemed impossible, abstract. I was still emotionally in Italy, fleeing through alleys, hiding in lighthouses, existing in the past even while being physically transported to the future. The apartment was modest. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, living space with windows overlooking the harbor. Simple furniture, impersonal but clean. On the table was a welcome packet with maps, emergency numbers, instructions for various services. "I'll leave you to settle in," Solveig said. "But I'll return tomorrow to begin your orientation." "And Emma? I know this is overwhelming, but you're safe here. Whatever you left behind in Italy, it can't reach you here." After she left, I stood at the window watching boats in the harbor, clouds moving across mountains, life continuing in this place that knew nothing of me. Safe. The word felt foreign. The first week passed in a blur of orientation and adjustment. Norwegian lessons filled mornings, harsh sounds and unfamiliar grammar that my mind struggled to absorb. Afternoons were spent learning the city, identifying resources, building a mental map of this new territory. Solveig checked in daily, bringing practical necessities, answering questions, maintaining the connection that kept me from completely floating free of reality. On the 8th day, she brought news. "The trial date has been set. 5 months from now. You'll need to return to Italy to testify. But until then, you continue building your life here." 5 months of suspended existence, waiting for the moment when I would return to Italy and confront Giovanni in court. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and necessary. What if... I hesitated. What if he finds me before then? He won't. The protection protocols are comprehensive. Only 3 people know your location. Me, your case supervisor in Rome, and 1 other security coordinator. That information isn't accessible to anyone else. 3 people. 3 possible points of failure. I'd learned not to trust systems completely, not after 12 years with Giovanni, who'd made a career of exploiting system weaknesses. But I had no choice except trust, or paranoia, and paranoia was no way to live. I began building a routine. Morning language lessons, afternoon walks through Bergen's winding streets, evening meals prepared in my small kitchen. Slowly, the city became familiar. I learned which streets offered the best views, which cafes served good coffee, which shops catered to international residents. I was integrating, becoming Emma Laurent. But at night, alone in the apartment, I was still Beatrice Martelli, still the woman who'd fled through alleys, still hearing Giovanni's voice promising destruction, still feeling the terror of being hunted. 2 months into my relocation, I had a dream. Not a nightmare, though those came regularly too. This was different. I was back at the villa, but it was empty. All of Giovanni's furniture, his artwork, his carefully curated possessions, gone. Just bare rooms and echoing silence. I walked through the empty spaces, seeing them clearly for the first time without the distraction of luxury. The villa was beautiful, but it was just a building. Without Giovanni's presence filling it, controlling it, defining it, it became simply stone and glass and wood. Not a prison, not a palace, just architecture. I woke from the dream with unexpected clarity. For 12 years, I'd lived in Giovanni's world, defined by his choices, shaped by his control. Even in escaping, I'd been reacting to him, running from his reach, testifying against his empire, building a new life in opposition to the old one. But Giovanni wasn't here. His influence didn't extend to this cold northern city. The only place he existed was in my memory, in the fear I continued to carry. At some point, I needed to stop running from what had been and start moving toward what could be. 3 months after arriving in Bergen, I met someone. Nothing romantic. I was far from ready for that complication, but a genuine connection nonetheless. Her name was Karina, a Norwegian woman about my age who worked at the language school. We'd been making small talk after class when she invited me for coffee. "You seem lonely," she said directly, in that blunt way I was learning was culturally acceptable here. "I thought maybe you could use a friend." I could, desperately. But friendship required vulnerability, required sharing pieces of myself. And most of myself was classified information, sealed behind the Emma Laurent cover story. "I'm Emma," I said carefully. "I moved here recently from France. Work opportunity fell through, so I'm figuring out my next steps." The lie came easily. I'd been practicing it for months. "What did you do in France?" "Translation work, freelance. I'm trying to transition to something more stable, more lies." But they flowed naturally now, the cover story becoming almost believable even to me. Over coffee, Karina told me about Bergen, the best hiking trails, the music scene, the challenges of winter darkness, and the glory of summer midnight sun. Normal conversation about normal topics. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed normal. We began meeting regularly. Never anything too intimate. Karina respected boundaries in that Scandinavian way. But the weekly coffee became something to look forward to, a connection to life happening now, rather than life left behind. 4 months after relocation, Solveig brought news that changed everything. "Giovanni has been arrested," she said, sitting across from me in my small apartment. "Charged with the crimes your testimony documented. He's currently being held on bail, but restricted travel. The trial proceeds as scheduled." Arrested. Giovanni, who'd controlled everything, who'd orchestrated empires and destroyed opposition, was now in the custody of the Italian justice system. How is that possible? His connections, his lawyers. Your testimony was more damaging than anyone anticipated. Combined with financial evidence and testimony from other witnesses, the case is strong enough that even his connections couldn't prevent charges. He's facing potentially 20 years if convicted. 20 years. Giovanni, who was 53, would be 73 when released. His empire would crumble, his power evaporate. The man who'd controlled my life for 12 years would spend those same years in prison. The satisfaction I expected to feel was complicated by something else. Not sympathy exactly. Giovanni deserved whatever justice demanded. But a strange emptiness, realizing that my identity was still so bound to his, that his imprisonment felt like an ending for me too. "In 6 weeks you'll return to Italy for the trial," Solveig continued. "You'll be under maximum security. Testify, then return here immediately. After that, depending on verdict, you may be able to relax some protection protocols." 6 weeks. Then I would see Giovanni again for the first time since fleeing the villa. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Whatever power he'd held over me, the power of fear, of ownership, of intimate knowledge, that power only existed if I continued to grant it to him. And in these 4 months of being Emma Laurent, of building something new without him, I discovered that I could exist independent of his definition of me. The weeks passed. My Norwegian improved. My friendship with Karina deepened. I found freelance translation work. Actual work this time, not cover story. Translating Italian documents to English for Norwegian companies. Small income, but mine. Earned through skill, rather than given as control. The night before returning to Italy, I stood at my apartment window watching the harbor. Snow was beginning to fall. Early winter arriving in Bergen. Beautiful and cold and nothing like the Mediterranean warmth I'd known. But I was learning to appreciate this different beauty. Learning that home wasn't a place but a state of being. That freedom wasn't the absence of constraint, but the presence of choice. Tomorrow I would return to Italy, would testify against Giovanni in open court, would expose 12 years of captivity masquerading as marriage, and then I would return here, to Bergen, to Emma Laurent, to the life I was building one choice at a time. The trial began on a gray morning in Rome. The courthouse was surrounded by press, by protesters claiming Giovanni's innocence. by curious onlookers drawn to spectacle. I entered through a secure entrance, flanked by Agent Rossi and 2 other security personnel. Walked through corridors designed to keep witnesses separate from defendants. The courtroom was formal, imposing. I took my seat in the witness box, my hands clasped to stop their trembling. And then Giovanni entered. He looked smaller than I remembered, or perhaps I'd grown larger in his absence. Prison time had aged him. New lines around his eyes, gray threading more obviously through his hair. But his gaze, when it found me, held the same intensity it always had. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor requested. "Beatrice Martelli," I said, using my real name in public for the first time in months. "Formerly wife to the defendant." Giovanni's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition of what was about to happen, perhaps. Or acknowledgement that I'd done what he thought impossible. I'd escaped. The testimony took 3 days. Question after question, establishing timeline and connection, linking Giovanni to specific crimes through my observations. His lawyers objected constantly, trying to undermine my credibility, but the evidence was comprehensive. Financial records corroborated every date I provided. Other witnesses confirmed details I supplied. The case was overwhelming. On the 4th day, I was released from testimony. As I left the courtroom, I passed Giovanni being led back to custody. Our eyes met for a brief moment. He nodded slightly. Acknowledgement or respect, or simply acceptance that this was how it ended between us. I didn't return the gesture. Simply turned away, walking toward the exit, toward Agent Rossi, toward the plane waiting to carry me back to Bergen. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Guilty on 15 counts. 23 years in prison. Giovanni's empire, built over decades, dismantled in days. I received the news in my Bergen apartment, Solveig calling to inform me officially. "It's over," she said. "You did it. You can start truly moving forward now." Moving forward. I'd been doing that already, small steps building toward something resembling a life. But now the weight of looking back could ease. Giovanni was contained, his threat neutralized. That evening, I met Karina for coffee, told her, carefully, that some legal issues from my past had finally been resolved. "Whatever it was," she said, "I hope it brings you peace." Peace. Not yet. But maybe someday. I walked home through early winter darkness, snow falling softly. My apartment waited, warm and simple. Tomorrow I had language lessons, then translation work, then dinner with Karina and some of her friends who were becoming my friends too. Small life. Honest life. Mine. The woman who'd been Beatrice Martelli. Trophy wife. Decorative possession. Carefully controlled accessory. No longer existed. But Emma Laurent did. Building herself one choice at a time. Free in ways that had nothing to do with Giovanni's absence, and everything to do with her own presence. I unlocked my apartment door, stepped inside my small chosen space. Behind me, Italy and its ghosts. Ahead, an unknown future in this cold northern place. But the future was mine to shape. And that, finally, was enough.